Welcome in to Run the League, and today I'm really excited because we are starting my rookie draft profile edition of Run the League. So just something to think about going forward. I'm going to be doing a lot of rookie profiles, talking about a lot of different rookies and kind of their fantasy impact going forward, and also kind of where I see them being drafted, at least early on in draft season. And then I'll also talk about some defensive guys just to throw in there in case you're in a dynasty league with IDPs or in case you're a fan of teams that will probably be drafting a defense player in the long run. So let's go ahead and do this, and I'm excited. Let's get rolling. All right, everyone. So welcome in. Of course, we're going to be doing rookie profiles today, and the first rookie that I'm going to start with today is Treylon Burks, the wide receiver out of Arkansas. Just a physical freak, and one that I'm really excited to talk about, and kind of a guy who I think is going to be really polarizing as things kind of move forward. I think that his draft process will ramp up a little bit. I think he's going to end up being a higher pick than maybe some people think at the moment, especially after the combine. But I'm going to talk about him from his high school days to college and then through the pros, kind of where I think he could land, and then also his fantasy impact as well. So to start off, he's 6'3", 225 pounds. In high school, he was a four-star top 100 player. Nearly 1,000 rushing yards and receiving yards, along with 39 touchdowns during his junior season. Played baseball and basketball at a high level as well. So obviously, as a prospect, was going to Arkansas. High hopes for him. Looked like a kind of one of those guys that could be a superstar at Arkansas, and that ended up being correct because he gets on campus and my goodness, his sophomore and junior years were terrific. As a sophomore, 51 catches, 820 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Obviously, during the shortened COVID season, he ended up with those kind of numbers. And then this year as a junior, 66 receptions, 1,104 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Really good player. Obviously made a huge impact at Arkansas, kind of really helped them get to the point now where I think everyone views that as a program that's trending in the right direction under Sam Pittman. And he was a big part of that and big part of their offensive game plan, and really didn't have an amazing quarterback during his time at Arkansas, yet still was highly productive, which I think is a good thing going forward. So some of my strengths for him, very fast. I think there's an absolute possibility that he goes to the combine and runs sub 4.4. Now, if he does that, I think that's where he's going to start getting those DK Metcalf comparisons. And obviously DK dropped for different reasons. Ended up dropping to the second round for injuries, and could the guy run a route? Would he be able to catch the football? And obviously DK has proven all the people that thought that wrong. Burks doesn't have the same kind of question marks around him, so if he does go run that sub 4.4, I think that's where he could get pushed inside the top 15, maybe even the top 10. I could see it, just someone being so enthralled by the athleticism and the profile that you see with him. So very fast, very strong, obviously 6'3", 225 pounds. That is a man amongst boys. And that's kind of the receiver nowadays that you want as your wide receiver one. In most situations, just big, strong, fast, great size. If you watch his film, contested catches is where he really thrives. I mean, the guy makes crazy catches down the sideline, one-handed grabs, just very physical at high pointing the football and very strong. You can tell that in his film. I think if you watch him, though, it's really interesting because, yes, he runs by defenders. Yes, he makes really tough contested catches, but where he really thrives is actually in the short passing game. Bubble screens in general, short slants. It's really those design plays that are going to him where he really is just awesome. Jet sweeps, getting the ball in his hands is where he really thrives. And those yards after catch or yards after touch, he's phenomenal. And really, that's where his impact in the pros is going to be seen. Just that ability to catch the ball, 1 yard downfield and turn that into a 50-yard touchdown. It's very unique, and there aren't a lot of guys like that, and there really aren't any guys that are 6'3", 225 pounds that have that unique ability. So those are his strengths. He's got a very high ceiling as well. I think that's baked into his strengths as well. If he really polishes things, that's where, you could really see a guy that could end up being a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's got that kind of talent. Now, as far as weaknesses go, I don't think he creates a whole lot of separation. I really don't. And I know you can watch film and see him run by guys and say, oh, that's creating separation. That's fine. But what I see is a guy that really has to make a lot of tough catches, mainly because he's not creating that separation through his route running. And so route running, route running along with separation are two areas that he really, really needs to refine. And that's fine. I mean, he's a raw prospect, 21 years old. He's a young guy. And so a guy who I think still can get to that point, but it's just something that he definitely needs to work on at this very moment. I think that kind of goes in line with kind of my whole, not necessarily problem, but my concern with him. And it's really fluidity. In and out of his breaks, in and out of his cuts. It just looks kind of herky-jerky at times and doesn't look as fluid nor as fast as I would like to see it be. And that can be a problem in the NFL. If you're not able to get open and you have to make contested catches every time you catch the football, that's a tough ask. And that can make life really, really hard in the NFL. He also, I think, did most of his damage in the slot. And that's a concern as well. Now, big slot receivers are fine. Like, he can absolutely thrive in that role. But I think if you're going to draft someone as high as you're probably going to draft him, you would hope that he's going to play outside receiver more than not. And at least have the versatility, much like a Devontae Adams, where you can line him up at both. And that's going to all come down to, can he create the separation at the line of scrimmage in man coverage on the outside? That's what it's going to come down to for him. If not, he'll play a lot of slot, be a dynamic weapon deep downfield, be a problem in the short pass game. But if he really wants to ascend to that top-level wide receiver, he's got to be able to beat man coverage, and that's an area where I do have concerns separation-wise. I have no concerns contested catches-wise in that one-on-one situation. Moving on to my comparison for him, this is an interesting one. So I mentioned DK Metcalf in that the size, the speed, kind of just the freaky nature. He kind of reminds me of him. But the comparison that I've heard a ton, and I kind of agree with it, is A.J. Brown. Just the strength, the yards after catch, the ability to make one guy miss and then go score a touchdown. And he's not necessarily juking guys. He's running over guys. He's using his strength, his size to get by different athletes. And A.J. Brown does a fantastic job of that. But I also see some Deebo Samuel in him, just with that short passing game ability, the way that he can be used in the run game, not necessarily as a running back like Deebo, but in the jet sweep and, short tosses. I think he can really be a valuable weapon in that regard. So I kind of see a mixture there. I think if you were going to point out one, I do think A.J. Brown is a pretty good comparison for him, but I see some different abilities with him as well that A.J. Brown doesn't necessarily do in that Titans offense. So potential landing spots, you got the Browns at 13. They need a wide receiver, obviously. They're looking to regroup after losing Odell Beckham Jr. They really need to get Baker Mayfield some help in the receiving game just to make that offense more explosive. Pick 20 to the Commanders. Yes, they have Terry McLaurin, but Curtis Samuel was hurt all year. They really need a second guy. And I honestly think Terry McLaurin really needs that as well. Terry was very good, has been really good since he entered the league, but if he can have another receiver next to him that can kind of take some pressure off him and maybe allow the offense to utilize him differently at times, I think it would really help him and that offense as a whole. I've seen number 19 to the Dolphins, where he could be next to Jalen Waddle in that offense, help Tua out. Number 24 to the Lions, which I think would be a dream for the Lions if they could get him at 24. Because you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have TJ Hawkinson. Now you need a field stretcher, and I think Treylon Burks could be that, as well as a guy that they could just get the ball to in creative ways. And then number 30 to the Packers, which if Aaron Rodgers were to still be there, and the Packers got Treylon Burks, and they were somehow able to keep Devontae Adams, my goodness, that would be fun. But I don't see him dropping that far. I actually think the best landing spot for him is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles need someone who can beat people deep downfield, but also someone they can get the ball to quick in the short passing game. You know, Devontae Smith is a great receiver. I think he's going to be very, very good going forward, but he's much better in the intermediate and deep downfield routes, just being a true alpha. Whereas I think Treylon Burks, if you're able to get him the ball in the short passing game, I think that would really help Jalen Hurts out. I think it would help make them more explosive offensively. And it would also allow them to kind of do what they like to do, which is run the football, but run it in a more creative way. And I think Treylon Burks could definitely give them that option. I think he would take a lot of pressure off Jalen Hurts and in the run game. They also have Dallas Goedert. I think it would help him be able to clear out the middle of the field a little bit. So honestly, I think it's the perfect landing spot. Now, the Eagles have missed on guys like this. When you talk about Jalen Reagor, you know, Quez Watkins was okay this year. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, those guys are all okay, but they need someone who actually is going to hit for them because Reagor simply has not done that, despite the fact they spent a first-round pick on him. I think that Treylon Burks would fill that role nicely, and I think he would be really, really good in that offense. So now fantasy impact-wise, I really think Treylon Burks is probably going to go 101 or 102 in your startup drafts, or I mean in your dynasty rookie drafts. I think he'll go 101 or 102 depending on the format. In Superflex, maybe he drops to 103 or 10, you know, probably I think even 103 is the furthest I would drop him just because quarterbacks aren't very good this year. I personally would take him at 102. I have one guy ahead of him who I'll talk about in later episodes, but I think Treylon Burks is definitely a top 3 pick. It's just one of those things where the upside is too great to pass on. And so it makes a lot of sense for him to possibly be the wide receiver 1 in this class. I think I have him wide receiver 2. So I would probably take him at 103 just because I like the guy that I'm going to talk about in the next episode just a little bit more, like by a smidge. But I really like Treylon Burks. I think he's going to be a great fit in the NFL and is a guy that has tremendous upside if he can polish some things in his route running and also land on the right team. So for this episode of Run the League, that's my prospect analysis on Treylon Burks. I'll be back next week, and actually later this week I have an episode, and then of course next week we'll talk about some more rookies as well. But for Run the League, this has been Grayson Grunhafer on NFL on 365 Sports.